Good afternoon and welcome to another issue, if you will, of the Veterans Forum. This is an interviewing program in conjunction with the Library of Congress where we have asked, and hopefully we'll get a lot of the guys and gals who served in any branch of any service in any of the wars that we can count on, if they will, to come and share their stories and their histories. The best part about it, the guys and gals that you least suspect have done some wonderful things. Today, we have another little bit of a twist. We'll get to that in a moment. Our guest today is Joe Whalen. I'll get him to introduce himself and then we'll start the program from there. If you will, sir, we welcome you and ask that you pronounce your name all the way through.
Thank you very much, Bob. Well, it's an Irish name, Whalen, W-H-A-L-E-N. First name Joe, middle initial P as in Paul. Born and brought up in the town of Lee, Massachusetts. And from there on, it's history.
Okay, okay. Could you give us your service date and the branch of service you were in, please?
I and three other lads from Lee enlisted in the service in November of 1942. Through 1942 to 1945, I served my military time and glad to do it and glad to get home and start a new world and new life.
Amen, amen. Now, would you, if you will, let's build a little history. Where were you when you grew up? What you have in your brothers and sisters and so on? What did you do before you went into the service?
Well, I was one of a family of 10. So you can imagine growing up was a daily ritual of what you had to do, your chores, and then what you did to augment your meager living at that time. You had a part-time job after school, along with the chores at home, and well, from there through to high school, graduated from high school in 1942, and went to a training school funded by the federal government. Was NYA, National Youth Association. And I went to school in Quoddy, Maine, and learned a trade there, finished my schooling, came home, and from there, things were not too bright in the European theater, and they were looking for volunteers to join the service. So my brother, two other lads and myself enlisted in the service. We went to Springfield and signed where we were inducted in Springfield, and then from there to Fort Devens. When we got out of Devens, they shipped us to Miami, Florida.
Vacation,
which was
huh?
pretty darn nice in November. Berkshire County was quite cool, but we learned quick the ways to get out of things in the military. It was supposed to be basic training, and of course we lived in Florida in a commandeered hotel.
Oh.
The Floridian Hotel was one of the larger hotels in Miami, and they had a pretty good elevator service, so we commandeered the elevator service, and rather than go out and do calisthenics and everything all through the day, or an 8-hour day, we hopped the elevator and spent our days up on the roof of the motel, or the hotel. And that was pretty near the extent of our basic training, just dodging the lines of calisthenics and
Oh,
yes sirs and no sirs, and we
but how did you manage
just
that?
did our thing.
Yeah. No, how long was basic? 18 weeks, 2 months,
No,
a
it
year?
was supposed to be 8 weeks, but we were out of there in a little over 3.5.
Wow.
They were looking for replacements and wanted to get people to school or teach
Okay.
them whatever was necessary to make them, well,
What prompted you to go in the Air Force?
I didn't want to walk. I knew darn well that if you went in the infantry, you were going to be hoofing it all the time. And the Air Force seemed like a good idea. And my dad often spoke of him being in the Air Force in World War I. And they seemed to live the life of Riley. Nothing, you know, spectacular, but they weren't out
In the
doing the manual work that the guys in the infantry were doing. So,
Well, where did you start your Air Force career, if you will? What bases or base did you start at and when?
well, the first start was the biggest jump in my life. From 80-degree weather in Florida to 20-degree below weather in Sioux Falls, South Dakota in December of 1942. And I'll tell you, tar paper shacks were what we lived in, and it was cold, but that's where we started our training. I started out as a radio student of the Morse code, telegraph, and of course, those days it was all Morse code, your means of communication.
Yeah.
So it was supposed to have been 16 weeks of radio training at that base. But as time progressed, I got pretty proficient in the Morse code, being able to take it on a typewriter, and
Wow.
you know,
Direct translation.
keep up with the code and minor maintenance on some of the radio equipment that they had at that time. So I got pretty proficient, and they said, well, we're going to send you to advanced radio school, and that will be in Madison, Wisconsin, at Truex Field. So I went there, spent, pretty near the spring and part of the summer in Madison. And that was a beautiful city and a beautiful, beautiful grounds. So from there, it was just training in advanced radio, and what they hoped probably to be able to do would be to send you to some isolated post, and you'd be their communication for the whatever you have to be.
You were the outpost.
Yeah, yeah, that's what it would have been. Probably Aleutian Islands, or it could have been, well, anywhere, Greenland, or maybe Ascension Island, or any island or outpost anywhere in the world.
Okay. Now, how did you transfer, if you will, that radio training into somebody, an MOS needed in the Air Force?
Well,
Did you volunteer? Did
in
they give you a break?
1943, received word that my brother that enlisted with us was lost on a flight in the Bermuda Triangle. So it was pretty devastating. I mean, the four of us that had gone in together were split up. My brother Don went to armament school and gunnery school. Another lad that was with us went into armament for a different type aircraft, and the other fellow went into the business end of the war. So when my brother was declared lost at sea, I asked to be transferred to his unit. And,
Wow.
well, a little bit of red tape and a pretty darn good major that was an understanding man kind of pulled a few strings and got me transferred to the flying part of the service. But in order to do that, I had to go to armament school and gunnery school. So they sent me from Wisconsin after a brief furlough at home to armament and gunnery school in Denver, Colorado at Lowry Field. So we just did our training there. When that training was completed, they assigned us to a training base with flight capabilities, and that was at Greenville Army Air Base in Greenville, South Carolina, the base that my brother had flown out of.
Wow. And you were able to make that transfer, and they...
Yeah. It was quite a... It was, you know, there was somebody that was looking out for me that
Yeah.
kind of helped pull a couple strings, and being from a large family, and it kind of helped a little bit to try to step into his footsteps and carry on what he had
Was out to do, yeah.
started out with.
Great.
But no, it was, you know.
Now, when you were reassigned and accepted, did you have to go through any additional training as far as flight, you know, radio gunnery and all that kind of stuff?
Well,
and if you did, where would that be?
The flight and gunnery school was all out of Greenville Army Air Base in Greenville, South Carolina. And that was our base of training, and it included night flight, instrument flight, different bombing techniques, aerial gunnery. They give you the whole
Give you the whole
the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, would you been assigned to a particular squadron, or were you just in a pool to be reassigned at some other time?
We, at the beginning, we were in a pool, but then they picked out 6 fellows for a plane. You had your pilot, co-pilot, bombardier, navigator,
Yeah.
which was all one, and the guy could do both. And you had a flight engineer, a tail gunner, and myself as radio operator gunner.
And you were a waist gunner?
Waist gunner.
Okay, now was there anybody on the other side of you, or?
No, just me alone in the
That's lonely.
in the middle.
Yeah.
And well, the tail gunner would be with me when we took off,
But he'd scoot back.
but he scooped back to his little cubby hole. It was, you know, a lot of cooperation, a lot of mixing it up good and tight in order to keep things on an even keel, because at any given time there could have been any sort of a, well, mishap
Yeah.
or emergency. You could run out of, have an engine go bad and have to feather that engine and go on one engine or something like that, you know. It was just a tight-knit group, and each guy depended upon each other.
Oh, yeah. PYA.
Yeah.
Now, what sort of training did you have, or how many hours did you have as far as learning how to jump, use a parachute, and so forth?
They gave you a parachute and said, this is the way you put it on.
Okay.
You've got your harness. Here's the ring that you grab.
Yeah, but
if
don't
you jump
pull it.
out, you make sure you pull that, because if you don't, it's not going to open up.
Yeah.
But you had 3 kinds of chutes. You had a chest pack, they had a backpack, or they had a seat pack. You could take your pick, because at the beginning of each flight, you'd go to your depot, supply depot, the parachute riggers, and you just grab a chute off the rack, and that was it. Whether it was going to work or not, that was a $64 question. But,
you know, that's the thing that scared me, because all the other guys that have talked about, you know, the different services, the fellows that's on the boats, and what idiot wants to jump out of a good plane? And you guys up there, who wants to go in a submarine? Boy, but everybody had their thing to do.
yeah.
Now, once you got all here, were you then permanently assigned to this was your ship, this was your crew?
This was going to be my crew. Designated pilot was Jimmy Littlefield. The designated co-pilot was Ray Sperling. John Miller was the bombardier navigator. Joe Bowes was the flight engineer. Ed Kenyon was the tail gunner, and I was the radio operator, waist gunner.
Waist gunner, okay.
And that's the way we started out. We were given a new airplane in Savannah, Georgia, a brand new B-25J. And sealed orders until we got on the end of the tarmac.
Yeah.
You open your orders, there's your flight schedule, your route, where you're headed to, and take it from there.
Yeah. Good luck and God bless.
So,
Okay, where did you go, if you will, geographically?
Well,
where did you take off from? South Carolina, you went down to the Azores and crossed that way to
from Savannah, we went to Miami, Florida, and they equipped us with what they call a belly tank, a Bombay tank for extra fuel.
Extra fuel, yeah.
So we were retrofitted with the Bay tank, and any other baggage, they put you right on a scale so that you didn't exceed 46,000 pounds or something like that. And just the bare necessities. So we took off from there and went to Puerto Rico. From Puerto Rico to British Guiana in South America. From there to Natal, Brazil, then across the Amazon River to Belém in Brazil. And from Brazil, this is over a period of probably 4 days. We do a segment a day in flight. It could range anywhere from 3.5 to 5 hours. And then from Brazil to the Ascension Island in the middle of the Atlantic. And that was an 8-hour and 20-minute flight, which was a long time for...
Yeah. Now this is on a brand new ship.
Brand new.
It's kind of a shakedown cruise at the same time, or a shaking cruise.
It's a shakedown, all right. And, but no, all the navigation was done by radio. You had a beam that you had, it was A on one side and N on the other side. Just like your highways today, you have your white line down the middle, you stay on the right, the other guy stays on the other side of the road.
Hopefully.
hopefully. And you follow that course, and if you diverted off course, of course, you'd lose your signal, and you'd been in trouble.
Yeah, being in the drink.
Because Ascension Island was not much bigger than, well, about 5 or 6 times big as the parking lot out here. And a short runway, 500-foot runway. So, or 5,000-foot runway.
Oh, that's a little bit better, because you had the helicopter.
5,000-foot runway. But no, it was an interesting flight, and you were sitting right on the edge of your seat most of the time, because once you were committed and went over a certain distance, there was no return.
Yeah, I know.
You couldn't go back. So from Ascension Island, we flew from there to Dakar, French West Africa, on the African coast, on the Atlantic side. Mm-hmm. And from there, up across Africa, up to, well, there was 2 bases we stopped at, one at Terlegma in Algiers, and then the other at Morocco. And we stayed there a few days, and from Morocco, we were assigned to the 340th Bomb Group that was stationed on the Isle of Corsica. Well, the day we were supposed to leave to go to Corsica, that night before, they were heavily bombed. And they lost all the aircraft that were on the field.
All along a flat line?
The German night bombers did a big number on them. So they held us back and flew us to the other side of the island of Corsica, to the city of Ajaccio. We landed there, picked up our papers, and were told that, all right, swing around the island and report up to Alexandria Airfield on the Corsica. So that's where we went, and that's where our training ended, and
that's where you went to war.
War began.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, the fellows that you were with, I mean, it depended upon them.
Oh, yeah.
Whether, you know, it was eating, sleeping, drinking, partying. It was pretty much a
It's a family.
family deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the best part about it, I think most of us who've been there, you weren't invited in, you were automatically there. And you did what you could to make sure that those guys were safe, and they, all the way around the line.
It trickled
You
right
couldn't
down.
buy it.
One looked after the other. And if one got in trouble, there was going to be 6 in trouble.
Yep. And don't mess with him, because there's 5 in back of him. That's well known.
You had a little bit of help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when you got in there, when did you really, if you will, go to war? How long were you stationed there before, as far as practicing and so forth? Did you just get in, get loaded, and take off?
We got there sometime around the 1st of March. And I started flying within a couple of days of being there.
Okay.
And there were combat missions. They had, well, in the 340th Bomb Group that I was in, they had 4 squadrons. And there was 12 to 16 planes in each squadron. So that meant, you know, we could put up pretty good, probably 50 aircraft. And you'd fly in a box of 6. There'd be a lead ship, 2 wingmen, and then right under the lead ship would be your number 4 man and the other 2 wingmen. So you flew in a box of 6. And each squadron would probably put up, well, we might put up 18. The next outfit up the road put up 18. But on a bomb run, we'd probably have, 80, maybe 80 aircraft.
Wow.
And which was a heck of a bunch of airplanes
yeah.
to get off a single
Runway, then
runway
rendezvous, and then take off.
that
Yeah.
took off just one way,
Yep.
up and down. There was no other, and it was a metal mat runway.
Oh, the Matson liners.
So
Yeah.
you all lined up and took off, and you assembled, you got together, and you went as a group. You had a lead bombardier. I flew lead plane quite a few times, and they'd give you a target. They'd give you an altitude to fly at. So you all rendezvoused and started making up.
Okay, now you high level, low level? Or
Depending upon the mission. One day you could go in at, well, our maximum height without oxygen was 12,000 feet. And our lowest was treetop level.
Duster.
Depending upon the mission you were on, if you were looking to get into marshalling yards, rail yards, bridge emplacements, most any kind of trip that they'd be sending you on, you'd have a different altitude. And another was probably to try to deter getting whacked by anti-aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
Being a mountainous region, all up through Italy and into southern France and that area, it was pretty mountainous. And hey, you could have a gun higher up than you were in the air. Some of the mountaintops were 8, 9, 10,000 feet.
Or you down through the
and
valleys?
you'd be going up through the valley.
Oh, God.
They'd be over your head. Yeah. And some places were pretty darn well fortified.
Okay, but you got through.
Well,
Well, now, were your targets primarily southern France, or did you go into Germany
no,
off to the side?
we didn't get into Germany. That would have been too much of a haul for us with the loads that we were carrying.
Oh, okay, from Corsica up to...
And the English theater was different than the Italian theater, and that's where we were mainly, in the Italian theater up through to southern France, and the invasion of southern France, that the American troops moved into there.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some pretty exciting times.
Yeah, can you relate a couple of those exciting times? A lot of people don't know that's exactly what you do. Okay, take your low level, medium, then at your max altitude. What kind of, shall we say, introduction did you guys get when you went over some of these places?
Well,
They make you feel welcomed?
some of them, boy, you were not welcome. They had ample anti-aircraft, 88 millimeter 105s, and they were capable of 8, 10, 12 rounds a minute. And
That's a lot of flak.
you take a battery of 80 to 100 guns protecting one bridge area or one railroad tunnel or roads.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, at times you try to get under the flak. Your target may have been a bridge that they've been having trouble to knock out, and the only thing was armor piercing at low level. And you probably win a couple thousand feet. And of course, you stood a little better chance there because you were down so close that they didn't have the arc that they could track you with.
Oh.
And they wouldn't lay up a barrage.
Mm-hmm.
It would be just pecking away at you. But if you were going in at anywhere over 10,000 feet, it was...
You were fair game.
You had to wade through it. It just like crossing a brook.
Were you guys ever hit any time going up and down?
Oh, got hit pretty good number of times.
Oh.
And we always seemed to get our target, and we got back home, but not always in the shape that we left in.
Yeah.
Sometimes you came home and, well, your aircraft, that particular airplane, would be out of service for a week or so, patching up.
Patching the patches.
Patching over patches.
Now, were you guys ever escorted by the Tuskegee Airmen down from Fuchsia?
No, we did not have the Tuskegees. We had a Brazilian outfit, a P-39. That was the Bell Airacobra. Yeah. And then we had a couple of P-47 units and a couple of P-51 units that used to fly escort for us.
Okay. Would they pick you up as you're coming by? They'd rendezvous and take off. Yeah.
They'd pick us up halfway to the target, or they might be just in the target area as air cover. And I'll tell you, when you saw that Brazilian outfit, when you saw them drop their belly tanks, you knew that things were
going to happen.
Things were already happening. And I'll tell you, you were damn glad that you test fired your caliber 50 before you got there, because you knew that
they're going to go
you might be able to get off a couple hundred rounds.
Now, in addition to the flak, do you ever get some of those Luftwaffe guys coming at you?
No.
Little bees and hornets.
We had them come in close, but we were boxed so tight that we had firepower that kind of disrupted their whole thing. And of course, we had air cover. We had guys that the P-47s and 51s and the 39s, they flew top cover for us, and they kept them pretty busy and let us try to go about our business. And that was to hit the target we were sent to hit.
Okay, and after you made that hit, coming back, did you experience any problems coming the other way if you go back home? Low level, high level?
Well, sometimes you'd be high level, but wind up down pretty low. You could probably have your hydraulic lines shot out. You could probably have electrical lines, harnesses blown apart, engine malfunction, a lot of flak holes. And that, you know, some of the trips back home were pretty scary.
Yeah.
And I know on a couple of occasions that coming home, you get just about to the Adriatic Sea, and you were losing altitude pretty fast. So you'd unhook your machine gun, throw your machine gun out through the hatch,
Lighten the load.
throw your ammo out through the hatch. The tail gunner, he'd throw his ammo wall out. Everybody would, you throw out everything but your parachute, and hope to hell you didn't need it.
Yeah.
But
Do you ever have to ditch?
nope, nope. That was, thank goodness, never had to hit the water.
Okay.
Always lucky enough to come back. I'll tell you, if it wasn't for the skilled pilot that we had and the other pilots that I flew with that were equally as good, but none better than Jimmy. And I'll tell you, they had their hands full lots of times, coming home on a single engine.
System shot away.
Hey, hydraulics gone, you'd be cranking like the dickens trying to get the landing gear down. I forgotten now how many cranks it was, to ungodly number, a couple hundred cranks on a hand crank to get your landing gears down. And you were sweating pretty good, even if you were in good shape. But it was interesting, and a lot of times the guys that kind of held things together for you were not even recognized.
Yeah. The ground crews?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, how many times did you start the crank, and did you ever have to come down belly, no wheels?
Nope. We thought we had them all down, but there was one landing that we made coming back from up around northern Italy, and we thought we had our wheels down, and we hit the ground, hit the runway, and we seemed beautiful, and went to put the nose down. Nose wheel collapsed, and we went nose dived right down through and off the end of the runway. If it wasn't for the lad that was flying tail gunner, that it wasn't the regular guy that was flying, but if it wasn't for him, I'd really got slammed good shape. But I was going through the air, and he reached out and grabbed me, and I'll tell you, it was scary. And don't anybody tell you that going out through an escape hatch, not as big as this table, 35, 40 feet up in the air to the ground, you're taking a big jump pretty fast.
Yeah.
And you're not waiting to see what's going to happen. Kind of, you know, it's a tricky thing to get out of, and you were not wasting any time.
No.
But no, there was some good days and some bad days.
Yeah.
Some days it was just a regular milk run. Just
But you never knew which was which.
Just as if you were going to the store to buy groceries and drive back home.
Yeah. Bill, we have all kinds of stuff here, and stuff's a bad word, but I'd like to take a few minutes, if you will, and go through what we have back here, folks. Way back when, and I don't know that you can see this, but that's Joe's dad back in World War I. So they have a long line of guys in the service in that family. Joe, Don, some of the other guys. From there, well, this is his brother Donnie here, that was lost over the Bermuda Triangle, that he in turn was able to replace himself. Now, it's kind of worn, but I don't know if you can see this or not, Red, but let me read it for you. This, I believe, would be something like you there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
just,
me.
just happened to be a little placard. Bullseye, B-25 Mitchell's batter another Jerry Bridge in Italy. Nondescript, but it's scary what some of these guys did. Now, before we go into the, what I'd call it the fruit salad bit, I'd like to introduce you to this young lady sitting beside here. She's what got us all together. Laura, you want to take over from there? You can take the paper if you will. This is the real stuff.
In February of 2007, I believe my grandfather received a notice about the 57th Bomb Wing mini reunion in New York. And since it was close by, he wanted to go because he hadn't been to one in about 10 years, because he went to a reunion in Cape May about 10 years before that. And so once he started developing an interest in it, I went on the internet and did some searching and got into the 57th Bomb Wing site, and they had a guest book. So I put a little posting on the guest book that my grandfather, Joseph Whalen, was in World War II. And so then nothing happened, and he went to his reunion that year. And in April of 2008, I actually got an email from a gentleman named James Littlefield, and he said, I noticed your posting on the website, and I was wondering if Joseph Whalen was the guy I'm looking for. There was a Joseph Whalen in my crew that I flew with in Corsica. So I got the email, I called my grandfather immediately, and I said, do you by chance know a James Littlefield? And that just,
Boom.
yeah, everything just started going from there. He was all excited. He was my pilot, and so I responded back to Jimmy Littlefield and
There's your
told
buddy.
him that it was my grandfather, and I gave him my grandfather's phone number, and he then called him.
Good.
So it's been 64 years, I think, since they made contact, and it was pretty exciting.
You can't blame her, can you?
No. Yep.
This, I didn't hold it up, I'm sorry, but this was the local paper. And as they say about James Curley, there's himself right there. A little recap of what they did and what Laurie did. In what we've been doing, there's been all kinds of amazing and wonderful unitings of different people. Now, I've had 3 different guys who live within maybe a 5-mile radius of this station who served on the Bennington aircraft carrier. I was able to give each one of them the other guy's phone number. Now they're getting together again. This is another case where people are going to get together. Now, after the war was over and you came home, what did you do? We're changing gears a little bit.
Well,
How was your reception when you did come home?
my folks are glad to see me.
By gosh,
Glad.
that's pretty good.
Glad that I could, and the family. There was no big celebration. Just darn glad to get home,
Oh, yeah.
get away from military life, and do your thing.
Mm-hmm.
There was no big celebrations. I was home before the war was over in Europe.
Oh, good.
So, you know, the big thing was the war, not who was home. And, well, it was an all-new life trying to get back to what was, well, you lost out on the latter part of your kid years.
Mm-hmm.
They say you're no longer a kid once you get in high school. But I'll tell you, a lot of kid stuff went on. And you still had ties to home.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to come home and, well, there was ample work if you wanted to work. But of course, when we got out, I think they gave us something like $200 or something like that.
Mad money, huh?
And it was.
Yeah.
And of course, the money that we were able to bring home from overseas with us was, you know, you had a couple $1,000 in your pocket. Boy, didn't take long to find a party. So,
Talking about finding a parties, were you married when you were in the service or when you got out?
No.
Bring us along that little line.
Well, when I first got out of the service, I poked around a little bit. I was lucky enough to get a temporary appointment on the Mass State Police. So I spent a year and a half on the state police, and of course, during that era, a lot of guys, all the guys were getting out of the service, coming home, and they liked to party. They had to party to make up for what they'd lost. And by God, you know, being a police officer, it didn't fit good with their parties, and it didn't fit too good trying to reconcile what had happened and what could happen. So after a year and a half, I got out of the state police, and I met a girl, and finally turned out to be my wife, and she was a Maine girl. And I'll tell you, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have the little home that I have in Tyringham today.
Mm-hmm.
She was a real down-to-earth woman, and brought up 3 fine kids for me.
Good.
From then on, it was tending to family life. I worked for about 20 years for a trucking company and maintenance in Lee. And after that, well, the big company started gobbling up the little fellas, so the company I was with was little, and
They got gobbled.
they got gobbled. So people that were sales personnel that used to call on us with truck component parts and like that asked if I was interested in the job on the road in sales, truck component parts. So I'll give it a shot. I worked for 14 years for Superior Spring Company out of Hartford, Connecticut, right out of home. I didn't have to drive to work. I had work right there. But I would go into Hartford a couple of days a week to augment my supplies on the truck, to bring in stuff to be repaired.
So
Generally,
you were a traveling store, Ben.
well, I had a pretty good sized truck.
Good.
20, I think it was a 24-foot box truck, and I used to come out of Connecticut loaded and go back into Connecticut loaded with repairs.
Good deal.
And if it wasn't for my wife, I wouldn't have been able to make the business for the people that I work for if it wasn't for her, because she picked right up, and she did more telephone business than they'd call at 5 o'clock in the morning, and where's Joe?
Yeah.
Sorry, he's gone.
But I'll take care of
But
it.
I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
And by golly, you know, it wasn't all roses.
No.
We had our ups and downs, and the same as any family.
Yeah. Now, did you ever join anything like the VFW, the Legion?
Yeah, I belonged to the VFW in Lee, life member. The the DAV, life member, and the 57th Bomb Wing.
Okay. Now, we got something else you did. Can you get a good shot of that, Red? This is one of Joe's other little pastimes. Can you tell us what this is, please?
Well, that's when I was fire chief in the town of Tyringham. I've been in the fire service from high school days in 1942. I was in the fire department in Lee.
The volunteers?
A volunteer. And when I went to school in Maine at the NYA school, I was fortunate enough to get into the fire department there and be associated with that. And it was training and,
Okay.
you know.
But it all adds up.
It added up, and of course, my dad was a fireman in the town of Lee. He was also selectman for a good many years. And it was in the blood.
Uh-huh.
And we moved to Tyringham, and I joined the fire department there, and over a period of years, through promotion by the members of the fire company, I was voted in as chief, and I was chief for 9 years.
Good.
And
You still active, but you just, every time the bell rings, you get ready to roll?
yeah,
Yeah.
I go down and open the doors for them.
Okay.
But I don't, you know, I don't, right now I'm a deficit as far as firefighting goes. I wouldn't want to put younger fellows in jeopardy.
Oh.
Because
but you know a lot of stuff that you can transfer to them.
that, you know,
Okay.
if they have to go into a place, I can sit there and man the pump.
All right.
Or radio communications,
All right.
which are a big feature today. I mean, if you haven't got, they've
Okay.
got good guidance.
Yeah. All right.
And they're pretty well briefed on what they have to do. But
Okay. Now, I just got a flag. I'm going to have to kind of wrap up.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, we're about the end of the line. I'd like to have you go through your medals and citations. If you can see it loud and clear, folks, this is some of the fruit salad that he's picked up along the way. Identify it, and if you will, give us a little quick breakdown of it.
this is the European Theater of War. And there's 2 battle stars on it. That's 2 campaigns.
Yeah.
The next is the Air Medal with the numeral 6 in it, which would be the Air Medal and 6 clusters.
Wow.
A total of 7. It would be 7 Air Medals. The wings, the Purple Heart with a cluster.
That means 2.
That means 2. The Good Conduct Ribbon, Campaign Ribbon, Pistol, Marksmanship, the 12th Air Force, which was what the Air Force group that we were in, the Presidential Unit Citation, the American Campaign, and, of course, the Ruptured Duck.
The ruptured duck, right. Now, I'm going to cheat. This is, you can see, it's slightly used, but I'd like to read this. It's for valor from the Army Air Forces Mediterranean Theater of Operations. Quote, "It is with great personal pride that I present this certificate to Technical Sergeant Joseph P. Whalen, number Blumpty Scratch, radio operator who, having been engaged in 65 combat missions in the Mediterranean Theater, In air battles of great intensity, has gallantly and repeatedly carried the offensive against heavy opposition to the heart of the enemy, and has, by his unfaltering courage, earned the gratitude and praise of his fellow countrymen, as well as me, his commander, signed Lieutenant General of the Army, commanding. Welcome home, buddy. Now, I thank you, and I thank you.
Thank you.
You started it all, and you're here at the beginning and the end. As we said at the beginning, this will be presented to you on a DVD. A copy will be going down to the Library of Congress. And as I said before, I'm going to give you an extra copy to send down here to this guy,
James A. Littlefield.
James A. Littlefield. Welcome, Jimmy, and we thank you for bringing him home. Okay? That's it, folks. Again, for those of you who have not heard the yet, I'd like to have each and every one of you, primarily the gals, the Ways, the Whacks, and the nurses who served in any of the wars, and you guys from Korea and Nam. You have a story to tell. We're here to try and help you get that across. So please contact us. We'll be doing all we can to make you as comfortable as we can do. We thank you. Peace and God bless.